Hi, I'm Andy Wynn, and I'm here with Phil Clark from 3M. Phil is the Global Technical Director for the Automotive and Aerospace Division. And we're here to talk about how to better engage people in innovation. So welcome, Phil.
Thanks, Andy. Happy to be with you.
Phil, you've enjoyed a long career in technology leadership for over 20 years now. I think the last 15 in 3M.
Right.
And 3M is frequently held up as a leader in the field of new product development. So how would you describe the importance of science, technology, and innovation to 3M as a business?
It's everything to us. You know, we refer to ourselves as a science-based company, and we articulate that through our corporate slogan, science applied to life. We are so passionate about the fields of science that we conduct an annual State of Science survey. And we've also appointed one of our most prolific corporate scientists, Dr. Jayshree Saith, as our Chief Science Advocate. And in 2019, our Board of Directors formed their own committee called the Science, Technology, and Sustainability Committee. So really, it's everything into our company. And if you look at our corporate vision, it's the foundation, science, technology, and innovation. So the vision is 3M technology advancing every company, 3M products enhancing every home, and 3M innovation improving every life. So quite ambitious, quite impactful to 3Mers, and certainly without science, technology, and innovation, we can't deliver on those on that vision.
Interesting, ambitious and impactful. I like that. I like that.
Yes.
I know, Phil, you share my belief and my passion that innovation in business is all about people, and you know, we've chatted a few times before this, but you know, when it comes to getting individuals more engaged in innovation in a business context, what are the top challenges that you most frequently run into, and how would you advise other business leaders to deal with them?
Yeah, to me, you know, there's a number of challenges for sure. So cultural differences, we are a worldwide organization, and so we work with low context cultures and high context. So you consider US as a relatively low context, and then Japan and other countries in Asia Pacific as high context. So that's a challenge in getting people involved and making sure that you're hearing all those types of different backgrounds and contributions. Training backgrounds. So we hire scientists and engineers with academic training from chemistry and physics to mechanical engineering to data scientists now. In addition, there are emerging fields. So things like additive manufacturing and robotics is becoming so important. All these fields have different language, different perspectives on how they look at different technical challenges. That becomes a challenge in innovation. And then another one is employment experience. So for a long time, we would hire at 3M people right out of university, whether it was bachelor programs, master's programs, or PhDs. And that still happens quite a bit. I would say that's a majority of our hiring. But now, as we look to acquire unique skill sets and different backgrounds, we are hiring people with a lot of experience. And so how do you retain and how do you build upon your culture by blending the new to industry hires and the experienced hires? That's a challenge. So what I've done are a few things to address. You know, the first thing I do with new teams is try to open up a conversation where we can understand those differences, whether it's culture or training or perspective. And one easy thing that I've done is to leverage strengths finders from Clifton. And first thing I do is we'll get Tom Rath's book, relatively inexpensive. You can read the first 30 or so pages of that book, and then you take an online survey that then will identify 5 out of 34 strengths that are unique to you. And that creates a dialogue where we can all learn from each other. Okay, what are your strengths? What are my strengths? How do they complement each other, and what challenges they may present as we're working together? That's been really good. And when you create that vocabulary, create that forum, it's really a non-threatening way to talk about the uniqueness of us as individuals, which I think is always a good idea.
No, that's interesting and very practical. So once you start engaging with the individuals and you started talking about building teams, what other challenges do you see in team building, getting people to work together in a collaborative way?
Yeah, so one of the even at individuals and teams, certainly with my interaction, that's a challenge is just getting face time. I have
Okay.
a relatively large organization,
Yeah.
and a lot of the times that I'm interacting with the teams is in a conference room, going through a PowerPoint presentation. And that's really not, where I started. It's not where the teams necessarily always thrive. It's at the bench. So I launched a program at 3M we call At a Bench. A lot of times we'll put that all into one word and call it At a Bench,
Okay.
where I'll spend a half a day each month with the team doing lab work. And there's no other management besides myself. And many times these are people who are reporting to my direct reports or reporting to even further down in the organization. So it's a great time for me to be able to see them. And I'm able to recall what happens in these events because they're so unique. Sometimes it's hard for me to remember one presentation from another or one meeting from another, but these out of bench experiences really stand out. And that's been a good way to get teams involved and then get teams to really show you, why they may need a particular resource or why a particular experiment is so challenging. And so that's helpful because I've been out of the lab for a number of years at this point. And one of the first things you forget are how difficult experiments are to do and not everything goes right. And so that's been useful to be able to do as well. And further along this line, what I've also done for some of these new fields, I'm a trained chemist.
Okay.
And I work with a lot of people who are mechanical engineers, chemical engineers, data scientists. These are fields that I'm still learning, very much so.
Okay.
And I've established some programs where I'll have a reverse mentor. So these are people who may be just into the organization for 2 or 3 years. They happen to be really good teachers. And I meet with them once a month and they give me homework assignments and answer all of my questions in a comfortable way. It's been great. And I get to know them, they get to know me, I learn a new field. So that's another way that I, have engaged teams and individuals.
Interesting. Yeah, I haven't heard of that at a bench before. That's quite a unique program.
It's great fun. It's one of the highlights of my month, and it's something that I honor the time. So we schedule a half a day where I'll go into the lab, and then we usually follow with lunch. And so then you can have a more personal discussion with the team and talk about sports or art or whatever it is to get to know each other. And that's been so impactful to enabling subsequent conversations when you're dealing with big challenges within a program. You've developed that relationship with the team.
Makes a lot of practical sense. Thanks. We talked about individuals, we started talking about teams, and thinking bigger, thinking of culture. What are the things you've learned about how to influence culture and the key things that can get everyone pulling in the same direction?
Yeah, I've become a really big fan of objectives and key results, or OKRs, and that's a methodology where you really set up aspirational objectives, and it's decoupled from compensation. So these are sort of extensions of what Andy was called in the last century, right? Management by objectives, which tended to be top down and the like, and not aspirational, tied to compensation. To me, getting into articulating your objectives in an aspirational and inspirational way is really important to aligning teams. The other thing, it sounds simple enough, but it's challenging, is to get teams to be thinking about outcomes and not output. So there's a number of methodologies out there about outcomes over output. And to me, this is the conversation that ends up happening while you're trying to form the OKRs, or while you're trying to form the outcomes that you're going to go after, are so important. And so much so that it focuses the team and aligns the team, and then it gets the team committed on to pulling in the right direction. That's been really useful. Even if you don't end up formally using OKRs, I just think having conversations around outcomes is important. The other point I would make for any leader is that's critical to culture is communication. If there's one thing that I would encourage any leader out there, is to develop a nice rhythm of communication. What I've been doing in the last few years is every quarter I release something we call quarterly highlights. And within those quarterly highlights, there's success stories with the customer, there's financials given our new product focus, We'll talk about financials and how they're delivering for new products.
Mm-hmm.
And then I provide one-pager details on every single program that we're working on.
Okay.
And this goes out across the organization globally. And it's been such a great way to invite all the stakeholders in a very transparent way to what the R&D community is working on, why they're working on it, and invite critique, frankly. If there's certain programs that the stakeholders are not seeing that they think are important and impactful, then it invites the conversation. That's been, I think, really impactful for our organization, which is global in nature, is to develop robust communication packages.
Well, I think we've covered quite a lot of ground there, Phil. Some real practical tips, and thanks for sharing. I'm sure there's a lot of business leaders in many industries will find value in some of the practical things you've said. So thanks for your time, Phil.
Great. Thanks a lot, Eddie.